Hello again, everyone. It's great seeing you, and welcome to Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather on this 21st day of November 2020. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphic. Starting up there along the eastern Alaska range, wind advisory out until through tomorrow morning until about noontime tomorrow for the Alaska range, winds gusting 55 miles an hour. So tonight through tomorrow until midday tomorrow. And then there's a winter storm advisory out or a snow advisory for the southeastern part of the panhandle there, Stewart and Hyder for snow, and that's out until 11 p.m. this evening. And the winter storm warning out for the Klondike Highway, Haines, Skagway, and Juneau. That's out until 9 p.m. this evening. And total snowfall amounts anywhere from, they're going from 4 to 8 inches total in that area there. And that should end by about mid-evening tonight, 9 p.m., and taper off throughout the night, continue to taper off as that front really washes out along the coast now, very strong, but it's now in a pretty fast weakening state. Moving on, no other watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere else in the state, at least for tonight and tomorrow. And satellite imagery showing what was a very strong frontal system that brought 75 mile per hour wind gusts to Middleton Island early this morning, and anywhere from 40 to 50 miles an hour along the North Gulf Coast, and gusts of 50 miles an hour in Prince William Sound today as well, with Cape St. Elias seeing gusts 60 miles an hour. And along the southeast coast, winds anywhere from 40 to 45 miles an hour over the inside waters to as high as 50 to 55 miles an hour out along the coast. And rainfall amounts were heaviest over the southern southeast coast with the front there, with Craig picking up about 1.84 inches in the last 12 hours, while Ketchikan had about 1 1/10 inches, and then it kind of drops off as you head north. Petersburg picking up 2/3 of an inch of precipitation, and Juneau about an inch of snowfall there, and then a little bit more snow as you head up the highway, anywhere from, again, looking for a total 4 to 8 inches by the time it ends later this evening. Otherwise, about 3/4 of an inch of rain with that batch of clouds there moved into Yakutat. So showers continuing with that feature. And also Port Graham on the southern Kenai Peninsula, they picked about 3/4 of an inch of precipitation today, while Kodiak had about 1/4 of an inch. They're sitting right under just about the low center there. But it is pulling off to the east, and then that band of moisture bringing areas of light snow up into the southern part of the state, and low pressure south of St. Lawrence Island. Really, most of the action with that is to the south, but north of the Pribilos with showers in the form of rain or snow and gusty winds, and Lucian's right on the edge of the cloud mass associated with the next storm that's developing and moving eastward right now. It's just off the picture there, but it's going to take a turn to the northeast tonight and tomorrow, and be quite an intense storm in the Gulf of Alaska late tomorrow night through Monday, as we'll see in a little bit there. Otherwise, today there's that low weakening as it pulls in just about into the Barren Island areas, give or take there, north of Kodiak. And then the front already weakening here from what it was even this morning. You can see it's the gradient washing out, and just some showers and lighter winds behind. Really not much wind going on currently anywhere except up over the Copper River Basin across eastern Alaska Range, where the wind advisory is out until midday tomorrow. And light winds over the western interior, basically dry, varying amounts of clouds. Could be a few more snow showers. I have depicted on here, but not too much. Scattered snow showers northern Bering Sea, then a dry slot, and then a little bit of moisture nudging its way up toward the central Aleutians. With that first low there at the front, that's not really the one that's going to develop. There's another one farther back, and we'll see tonight it kind of comes onto the picture there and merges with the one we just saw, and drops to about 984 millibars. So the winds will start to come up along the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula later tonight with increasing rain. Otherwise, southern Bering Sea dry, and light winds, some clearing along the southwest coast into the southwest interior. Weak trough will kick off some snow shower activity from St. Lawrence Island into Norton Sound, maybe Nome, and the southern Seward Peninsula across the Nulato Hills, Kuskokwim Valley into the western Alaska Range, and then mostly mixed precipitation, Kenai Peninsula of a light variety in across the Panhandle. Dry though on the south coast of the Panhandle, and the interior north of the Alaska Range pretty much dry, or will be dry all the way out to the Arctic coast with a fair amount of clearing. And then we'll see tomorrow on Sunday that system continues to deepen as it moves northward and tracks northeastward just south of the Alaska Peninsula. So gale force winds come back into Kodiak in the afternoon with rain heavy at times. And wind and rain will begin to increase mostly on the western North Gulf Coast. Of course, then Barren Islands and southern Cook Inlet. And areas of snow will develop over the southwest interior, and a chance of some light precipitation getting into the central southern Cook Inlet area during the afternoon, but whatever it does won't amount to too much. Panhandle, though, kind of dry, very weak low there on western Dixon entrance, so just some scattered shower activity. Light winds, though, could be some clearing as well. And breezy over the Aleutians, but for the most part dry, especially Adak and Atka. And then the North Slope dry with mostly clear skies occurring. And we'll take a look at the chart for Monday. That low center deepens and moves slowly east-northeastward into the southern Gulf of Alaska. You can see a very tight pressure field across Kodiak Island. Definitely sustained storm winds, 50-55 knots with hurricane force gusts, and also storm warnings out in advance of that front with rain and snow mixed heavy at times. Snowfall levels going up there with that south-southeasterly flow across the Panhandle, and becoming quite breezy over even south central Alaska, Copper River Basin areas, mostly along and south of the Alaska Range, as sharp high pressure builds up over the southwest interior, or the western interior there. That'll create that gradient, and then just on the western side of that ridge, gale force southwesterlies there ahead of that next front and low pressure system moving into the western Bering Sea. So rain and snow with that will be coming in, and some lingering snow showers, though St. Lawrence Island, maybe Bering Strait, and possibly the northwest coast. Otherwise, high pressure light winds and variably cloudy skies for the northern interior, all the way down into northern Bristol Bay. Taking a look at lows tonight, anywhere from 10 to 20 below over the central eastern interior to 25 below at Northway, and a little below zero depending on where you are in the Arctic coast. Otherwise, mid to upper 20s on the southwest coast, lower to mid 30s in the Bering Sea, mid 20s northern Panhandle to mid 30s along the central and south coast. And for the highs tomorrow, mid 20s to sit in the valley, and in the 30s for the Kenai Peninsula, with Kodiak Island looking at lower 40s. Lower 40s also for the Alaska Peninsula and the Pribilofs. Upper 30s for the central and eastern Aleutians to about Nikulski. And up in the interior, 5 below to 5 above about sums it up for the Tanana Valley westward to say Galena and Tanana. 5 for McGrath and Nikolai. In the 30s for the Panhandle to near 40 south. In the teens for the Arctic coast. And staying below zero eastern interior and the upper Yukon Valley areas. And then for the lows, Monday morning, below zero central interior, 10 to 20 below to, again, 25 below Northway, back below zero for the Copper River Basin, a shade below zero. Same thing for the Arctic coast. Milder in the Panhandle, or mid-20s to mid-30s over the Panhandle, upper 30s Kodiak Island, 20s to lower 30s south central Alaska, and in the 30s Bering Sea and the Aleutians. That'll be followed by Monday afternoon highs, a shade below zero there, Kobuk, Koyuk Valley, as well as the upper Yukon Valley, southward across eastern interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the first line weather graphic for Sunday morning, we've got pretty much VFR over the areas north of the Alaska Range, except for eastern over toward the upper Tanana Valley 40 Mile Country area to actually a little north of Eagle. Some marginal VFR possible. Otherwise, VFR all the way up to the Arctic coast. IFR, Kuskokwim Valley near Denali on the west and northwest side of the Alaska Range, and then back into Norton Sound, and marginal VFR, much of the Bering Sea, much of the Aleutians, some IFR just nudging up to the eastern Aleutians and south coast of the Alaska Peninsula, the marginal VFR on up across Kodiak Island, Fognak Island into Cook Inlet VFR, and IFR to start, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, and possibly along the coast range of the North Gulf Coast there, otherwise marginal VFR southern Alaska. And for the afternoon, marginal VFR continues southern Alaska. Now we have IFR over the southern panhandle, otherwise marginal VFR for the remainder of the southeast coast and inside waters. With marginal VFR along and south or east of the Alaska Range, Cook Inlet, VFR, and a narrow swath of VFR there along the western slopes of the Alaska Range from northeast Bristol Bay, Iliamna Lake, up through the Kuskokwim Valley, and then the eastern interior, North Slope, Arctic Coast, VFR, IFR, there, the Bering Strait to just catching the west side of St. Lawrence Island. Marginal VFR for the western Aleutians and the Bering Sea with VFR, AKwx area, and then IFR from Unalaska Island across the Alaska Peninsula to Kodiak. And Monday morning, IFR, Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay into southern Cook Inlet, up the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, and also into the southern Kuskokwim Valley, and the eastern Kuskokwim Delta area with marginal VFR northward there, all the way up to about Point Lay. And then marginal VFR in over the Kobuk-Koyukuk Valley areas and VFR there along and south of the Yukon River from the flats, all the Tanana Valley into the northern Kuskokwim Valley. And the Panhandle, some marginal VFR down over the southeast part, otherwise VFR. And for the afternoon, that doesn't last. IFR slips on into the coast and across the southern Panhandle with marginal VFR elsewhere. Marginal VFR across the Copper River Basin from the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound area, right up across the upper Tanana Valley to about Eagle. And then the interior, basically VFR from the eastern Arctic coast right on down into, say, the Dillingham area, Togiak Bay, and then back up along the southwest coast. Marginal VFR, lower Yukon and Kuskokwim River Valley areas, and then northward there across Seward Peninsula of the northwest coast. Some IFR for the western North Slope and Arctic coast. Narrow band of IFR, St. Matthew Island on down southwestward to Kiska and Amchitka Islands. Past the Zanutuvik, VFR, and for Adigan, same forecast. VFR flying, Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal. Rainy, marginal. Windy, possible marginal VFR on the southern entrance, otherwise VFR. And for Isabel, same trend, southerly flow, so possible lower conditions, southern approach, otherwise VFR, not too bad. Mentasto staying VFR. Tanita, mostly marginal. Portage, definitely marginal. And for Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Excuse me. 2,000-foot freezing levels there over the north slope of that upper level ridge. It's kind of pulling off to the north there. And then 2,000 to 8,000 feet there along and south of the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians. And we've got the surface all the way up in toward the Bering Strait. And for icing, occasional moderate rime icing moving in the Alaska Peninsula, especially on the south side there, up to about Chignik, maybe. Otherwise, light to isolated, moderate, or mixed icing. Threat diminishes as you head north there across eastern Bering Sea. And then some leftover stuff there from south central Alaska, Susitna Valley along the North Gulf Coast to the southern Panhandle. And for jet streams, we're looking at pretty strong jet, 100 to 155 knots there along and just south of the Alaska Peninsula. Then it dives off to the southeast, well off the southeast coast. Easterlies, 40 to 50 knots central interior. 9,000 feet, 40 knot east-southeasterlies up over the North Slope and western Arctic or eastern Arctic coast. Otherwise, 50 knot northwesterlies there just south of the western Aleutians and 3,000 feet. Low, again, coming up the Alaska Peninsula, so increasing winds with that up to 35 knots, and then a weaker low off the southern southeast coast. Have easterlies, maybe 40 knots there up along the Kobuk Valley northwest coast. And turbulence with that system coming up the Alaska Peninsula. Moderate chop likely. Aleutian Range, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians.
Technology. It's the rhythm of our everyday life. We're more dependent on satellite and communication systems than at any other time in history. Disruptions can affect our economy and even our safety. To prepare for the effects of such events and minimize impacts, we need to look outside our atmosphere, some 93 million miles away, at a star we call the Sun. It's our main energy source. It warms the Earth and grows our food. While the sun and the space between may seem pleasant from our perspective, it's anything but peaceful. At its surface exists a chaotic state of eruptions and radiation. And unlike Vegas, what happens at the sun doesn't stay at the sun.
Space weather is essentially emissions from the sun, radiation, magnetic field that erupts from the solar surface, pumped out into space, sometimes right towards Earth. When it impacts the Earth, it impacts our technology. That's what we call space weather.
These solar events and their effects at Earth can disrupt systems we take for granted. From causing blackouts to the power grid, to delaying offshore drilling operations due to inaccurate GPS data. Interference with communication systems can force air traffic to reroute and impact rescue response and coordination. Outside our atmosphere, solar radiation can harm astronauts and the systems they depend on. The good news is that these eruptions can be detected early. Forecasters at the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center in Boulder, Colorado, have their eyes on the sun at all times.
The Space Weather Prediction Center is part of the National Weather Service and is very much like a normal weather forecast office. We're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're looking at data, we're looking at imagery, we're looking at model outputs. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches of imminent activity to our customers so they can take action.
In many ways, forecasting space weather is a lot like forecasting hurricanes. Those who rely on space weather forecasts, like electric power grid managers, are informed early on and can begin taking protective action.
When we see an eruption on the sun, space weather forecasters will issue a watch. And this is much like a hurricane watch. When a hurricane sits offshore of Miami, for example, perhaps 48 hours out, we too can see way in advance that something may be coming towards the Earth.
As the storm moves toward us, it hits a monitoring spacecraft orbiting 1 million miles away from Earth.
It's kind of our buoy sitting out there offshore, and that hurricane about 30, 45 minutes before it makes landfall, we'll get the measurements from the buoy. That's what the spacecraft does for us. That big eruption that left the sun hits the spacecraft. Now we've got the measurements of exactly what's going to impact us here on Earth, and we issue the warnings to give the power grid a heads up that the storm is now imminent. An interesting element to this whole process is that when the forecasters issue the alert, the power grid receives the alert, takes the necessary actions to protect the grid, and the average citizen never knows anything ever happened.
The number of customers who rely on space weather information continues to grow. As our reliance on technology increases, so will our need for constant monitoring of the sun.
Space weather affects technologies. As conditions develop, we put out alerts, warnings, and watches to our customers so they can take action.
GPS has changed society. Most people don't realize how remarkable and how many different applications there are.
The GPS has become an integral part, not just of our daily lives as far as cell phones and guidance for our cars and mapping, but the whole system in agriculture is really relying heavily on high accuracy GPS.
So they're using GPS to plant those seeds with centimeter accuracy. And then they can come behind it and irrigate and fertilize right where that seed is with that 1 centimeter accuracy.
The GPS creates a line for the operator that he can steer along, or you go to another level and the operator doesn't steer anymore and the tractor has an automatic steering system on it, much like a cruise control on a car, except for when I push the button it doesn't drive a set speed. When I push a button it stays on a predefined line.
You don't even need lights. You can do it at nighttime. You program your GPS and it's driving that tractor for you. So it's huge, and it's changing the way that the farmers farm the fields.
6 or 7 days out.
There's an interest in GPS applications from the space weather side because when the sun is eruptive, it causes GPS to falter, and in some cases it doesn't work at all.
Productivity may suffer to a certain degree in that there's no way that I as a human being can steer as good 8 hours a day as a GPS system's going to do. It's going to be the same all day long. Some of the other application technologies, those are going to be gone. We're not going to have the ability to do good section control on sprayers and planters and fertilizer applicators without GPS.
We see a huge growing customer base in so many different industries, so many different sectors now relying on GPS and high precision GPS. They're all big customers for us.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Taking a look here at the coastal or the sea ice analysis for today. Not a lot different than what we've seen. A little bit more ISO Norton Sound or Kotzebue Sound, and also eastern Norton Sound along the coast of the Yukon Delta, though, and southern Norton Sound. A little bit of an increase there, and of course solid along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and about the same there on the west side. And for the coastal water forecast, pretty light winds for the panhandle tomorrow, especially out along the coast and the north coast. Southerlies at 10 knots, and then variable 10 to 15 on the south coast. Northerlies at 15 for Stevens Passage, Lynn Canal, for Clarence Strait. Winds southeast at 15 knots, 3-foot seas. Big increase in winds coming on Monday with that next big front coming in. 40 knots from the south-southwest on the south coast, seas up to 25 feet. Storm warnings on the north coast, east-southeast, 50 to 55 knots, seas 20 to 24 feet. And Clarence Strait coming up to small craft advisories out of the southeast at 25. Stevens Passage, southeast 20, north 20 for Lynn Canal. And for northern Cook Inlet tomorrow, light northeast breeze at 10 knots, 20 knots south of the Forelands, east 20 for Kamishak Bay, Barren Island southeast 20. And west-southwest 15 for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound southeast of 15. And now for Monday, east winds sustained 60 knots, high-end storm force winds there for the eastern North Gulf Coast, as well as the Barren Islands, 60-knot northeast winds there. Prince William Sound northeast 40, seas 9 feet, and northern Cook Inlet northerlies 40 knots. Southern Cook Inlet storm warnings once again, north 50 knots, 22-foot seas, and 55-knot northerlies for Kamishak Bay. And for Kodiak Island tomorrow, gales coming back in the afternoon, southeast 35 and east 25 for Shelikof Strait and Bristol Bay, northeast 25 there on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, east 25 south side with gales from the southeast there from Sitkinak to Castle Cape. And for Monday, northwest 60 knots, east side of Kodiak Island, higher gusts out of the bays, north 50, good for storms there for Shelikof Strait. And then we've got storm warnings all the way from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, 50 to 55 knots out of the northwest there, southern Alaska Peninsula. Bering Sea side, northwest 40 knots from Cape Sarachev all the way up through Bristol Bay. And for the eastern Aleutians, tomorrow, north to northwest, 30 to 35 knots, seas 8 to 16 feet. Small craft advisories, Adak and Atka, northwest 25 to 30, and then west 25 to 30 for Amchitka to Shemya. And for Monday, storm warnings there for the western Aleutians, actually all the way into, say, Adak. And for Adak and Atco, it'll be south to southwest, 45 to 50 knots, 21-foot seas, and then 55-knot winds there for Amchitka Island, seas 27 feet. And 40 knots southwest winds moving in toward Unmak Island in the afternoon. Otherwise, Unalaska Island, west, 35 knots, 14 to 18-foot seas. Southwest coast tomorrow along the Kuskokwim Delta coastlines, east 20 knots, Pribilofs, west 15, southwest 30, St. Matthew Island, southwest 15 for the Yukon Delta coast, southerlies 20 knots, Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island. And for Monday, south 15 for Norton Sound, 30 knot southerlies for St. Lawrence Island, west 25 Yukon Delta coast, and gales out of the northwest for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, south of Nunivak Island, 40 knot southerlies coming into St. Matthew Island in the afternoon, southwest 30 for the Pribilofs. Eastern Boulevard Sea Coast, brisk wind advisories, east winds 25 to 30 knots, strongest toward Demarcation Point, and the central and west side, east winds 20 knots, and southeast winds 20 knots from Wales to Cape Beaufort. Outlook for Monday, southwest 20 knots, Wales up to Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort there, that narrow area southeast at 20, and then down to 15 out of the southeast on the western Arctic coast, central coast east at 20, and then brisk wind advisories for the far eastern stretch of the coastline as they pick up to about 25 knots. For tonight, again, conditions improving there with the winter storm warning ending over the northern Panhandle, Juneau to Skagway by 9 p.m. And just some leftover rain and snow showers as that front just completely washes out along the coast there. And then a weak trough with maybe some snow shower activity there from the Alaska Range back into Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island. Dry to the north, dry to the south. Next system spreading rain into the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians later tonight. Definitely into Kodiak Island tomorrow on the Alaska Peninsula. And increasing along the North Gulf Coast. Not too bad over the southeast coast. Scattered showers, maybe some clearing. Dry weather continues over the interior. Next day, big storm rages in the Gulf of Alaska with gale, storm force winds. Good night.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.